Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great? Good. I don't think it's any great secret that the cost of recreational shooting and really anything related to firearms at all has increased significantly in recent years. Thanks to ongoing shortages and panic buying, the price of ammunition has absolutely skyrocketed. Even in the world of reloading, we've seen increased prices and we've suffered shortages of materials. I was talking to a fellow gunny at the range the other week, and eventually we landed on the topic of rising prices, and I made an offhand remark that if the situation continued, I wouldn't be surprised if the average person would soon not be able to go recreational shooting as often or at all unless it was something, limited to .22 long rifle. That comment stuck with me the past couple of weeks, and I've since discussed the question with other people, and most people seem to disagree with me. A poll I put on the community tab section of my YouTube channel saw about 3-to-1 belief that the sport shooting wasn't dying. But what if I'm right? Now here's why I could be right. Now before I begin, everything I'm about to say going forward is through the eyes of a Canadian. Now, while there are some similarities between the US and Canadian markets, the shortages and price hikes in Canada are largely a spillover effect from what's going on in the United States. And while I have a passing familiarity with the US market, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on it as to what goes on down there. So everything I'm going to say is going to be fairly non-specific to any particular market, and it might not be exactly what you're going through wherever you may be. Now that that's out of the way, I'm going to be upfront. I don't know the demographics of recreational shooting. I don't know if affluent people shoot more than those of modest means. I do know that price hikes, like the types that we've seen across the board for ammunition and reloading supplies, do impact those on the bottom half of the economic ladder far more than the top half. I know, no great surprise there. A few bucks price hike in the cost of .22 long rifle, 9mm or 223 might be largely inconsequential to the middle class and above, but when the cost of everything is going up, that price bump does hit the lower middle class and below more severely. And when prices rise, economics usually dictates that people either buy less of something, buy it less often, or they don't buy it at all. And that means they either shoot less or they find other things to do with their time and money. Now, that's the same in the world of reloading. A lot of people get into the hobby because they want to save money. And I can tell you from personal experience that every single caliber I reload is more expensive today than it was just 5 years ago, thanks to rising components prices, when you can find them. In fact, the price of an individual round, not including brass, because a lot of times I can manage to just scrounge it up at the range, is approaching the price that I refused to pay for factory ammunition just 5 years ago. Adding insult to injury are the shortages of ammunition and components. Many of the manufacturers have released public statements and videos in the past year in an attempt to explain the situation from their side. We're told that they're running their lines 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're expanding their capacity as much as economically is viable. That everything that isn't going to military and law enforcement contracts is being sent to the consumer market. Regardless of what's going on with the supply, whether it's being naturally eaten up or artificially constrained, as some conspiracy theorists would have it, there's no argument that the shelves are often bare when you hit up your local gun store, unless you happen to shoot something bizarre like 9.3 by 74mm rimmed. If you can't buy ammunition, you won't be doing much recreational shooting no matter how much money you got, right? And a lot of people aren't willing to pay the inflated prices either being charged by retail outlets or those taking advantage of the shortages. Now, obviously, political shenanigans haven't helped either. Although the Joe Biden empowered executive order mandated end of the importation of Russian ammunition hasn't actually occurred yet. Prices have already increased and availability slashed, for the calibers that companies like Tula and Wolf send to the Canadian market. Up here in Canada, recent announcements by some companies that they're no longer importing ammunition and components from Europe due to rising costs, and some Canadian couriers announcing they're no longer shipping ammunition across the country, means it's actually getting harder for some people to order it. Finally, and this is the one that's of concern to me, is that ammunition manufacturers and component providers have seen that the market is willing to bear these higher costs. What worries me is that even when the shortages have actually ended and the panic buying stops, someone in the supply chain, whether it's the manufacturer, the middleman, your local store, is going to decide that since you paid double and triple prices for ammunition and components before, you're willing to do it going forward as well. These prices could actually be the new normal, and that may help eliminate a lot of people from recreational shooting. Not exactly heartwarming. Now, here's why I could be wrong. I guess the most obvious retort to that recreational shooting won't die due to cost is that you can still shoot for relatively cheap if you go for the rimfire route, let's say, with something like 22 long rifle. As much as the price of a brick of 22 long rifle has jumped in recent years, I mean, let's be honest, it has, you can still pound out a few hundred rounds for about 10 cents a round in the United States when it's in stock. Making a range trip still within the means of most people. It's not as cheap as it used to be, yes, but $20 to $30 for a range trip, I think is doable for most people. It's probably fair to say that the panic buying stretches all the way back to the Obama administration and has had quite a bit to do with the shortages and the rising prices. At some point, and I think we may have already seen the early signs, the panic buying and, as some put it, hoarding will come to an end. Just like toilet paper, we all remember that. There's ultimately only so much you can keep on hand and realistically use. When consumers are finally sated, with their inventory, we're going to see shortages ease and hopefully prices fall. In the US, I don't think there is much of an appetite for gun control at the moment, so I don't think we're going to see any more prompts and system shocks that will get people to start stocking up on yet even more ammunition and firearms. Of course, that could change tomorrow, right? I think what will also help perpetuate recreational shooting via cheaper ammunition is that thanks to the wonders of capitalism, companies are going to come in and meet the need for it. We've already been hearing about several American companies that are exploring entering the market for cheap steel-cased ammunition in calibers like .223 and 7.62 by 39, to replace what the country largely imports from, places like, or companies like Tula and Wolf. You'll probably also see companies looking at alternative technologies and approaches to help make ammunition cheaper. Now, what that is, I don't know. Otherwise, I'd be rich right now because I'd be doing it. Ultimately, although a lot of people are blaming capitalism for the shortages and rising prices, perhaps they've been buying that Soviet and Russian ammunition just a little too long, if you get my drift. The reality is that the shortages are the result of a confluence of factors from a variety of players that include the consumers themselves. Rising prices come with shortages, and that's a fact of every economic system, whether it's a free market or a centrally managed one. Capitalism, though, is what will solve the shortage. A need is identified, and someone will come in and meet that need. So all of that said, where does the Redneck Preppy stand? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the pessimist in me thinks that sport shooting for a lot of people is going to be constrained in the near to possibly midterm future. Regardless of what happens, I think that it's going to take a while for the market to regain an equilibrium where stock and prices interact at a point where I think most people can be comfortable with, or at least accept. That said, I am cautiously optimistic that recreational shooting isn't going anywhere, and that the average person, be they of more affluent or less affluent means, are going to continue to have the opportunity to exercise their God-given right to punch holes in paper, shoot tin cans off a fence, or pound a steel gong to the extent that they wish to, and without mentally calculating how much it's costing them. At any rate, agree? Disagree? Feel free to leave your comments in the section below. As always, I hope you found the video to be vaguely entertaining and somewhat mildly informative. I hope you have yourself a great day, and may all of your shots ring true. Take care, and bye-bye.